Okay, we're going to look at section 2.2 here to start. And so one of the things that we're going to look here is about what's called a frequency distribution and the different graphs that we can do with this. Now, we are making a transition here. This is now going to be numeric data when we're doing this, okay? So the first thing is a frequency distribution is basically just like what it was for the qualitative data, except now we're going to kind of have a range of values, or we could. Now, sometimes if we're only working with like single value things and there's not a lot of them, we may still do that just through the straightforward. But what we do oftentimes see with the frequency distributions is we see that we have them in what are called classes, which is basically I have a grouping of numbers that I'm going to allow to have happen. Now, with this on the class, on our classes, number one, they can't overlap. Number two, we can't between them. So I can't have one that starts from 0 to 4 and then the next one picks up at 7. I've got to have every number could have a home. And we also have to make sure that the class width, which is how far it is from one class to the next, is consistently the same. So if we take a look on this example that they've got right here on the side, we've got what are called lower class limits, which is the low side value. So now they can ask you for what is the lower class limit of the third class? Well, that would be the number 10. But if they ask you for the lower class limit, plural, then they're going to want you to state 0, 5, 10, and 15. Now, we also have upper class limits, which is the high side value that's allowed in. So in this case, we have 4, 9, 14, and 19. Now, the class width is how far it is from a lower limit to the next lower limit. It is also how far it is from an upper limit to the next upper limit. And this should be consistent. So if you notice, from 0 to 5 is a difference of 5. From 5 to 10 is a difference of 5. From 10 to 15 is a difference of 5. Also, though, from 4 to 9 is a difference of 5. 9 to 14 and 14 to 19 both also have a difference of 5. So that class width can be found in several locations as we're processing through here. Okay? Now, when we're choosing classes, okay, then and depending upon, so if I decide to group from like what we just saw, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and so on, where I'm kind of doing a class with 5, but someone else chooses to do a class width of 7, then their frequency distribution table will look slightly different because values that I had in my second class, like a 6 or a 7, would now be getting included in their first group or in their first class. So every observation has to fall into one of them. So you've got to make sure the classes to cover all of the data. Secondly, the classes cannot overlap. So you can't have from 0 to 4 and then from 4 to 8. Because if I have the data point 4, which one do I put it in? The 0 to 4 group or the 4 to 8 group? So you cannot have overlap. You do need to have equal width. So you can't do from 0 to 4 and then 5 to 12 and then 13 to 14. You can't make them all different sizes. And we don't need gaps. So the other thing is, even if there's not anything in that category, okay, you still have to include it and just show that there is nothing slated in that particular group, okay? Now, when they're talking about constructing, most of the time with this, you're going to get told one of two things. Either you will be told how many classes you're supposed to use, and we'll talk more on how to use that to help us find our information, or they will actually tell you what the class width is going to be. And they'll tell you, use a class width of 6, use a class width of 5, whatever it is, okay? Then you're going to choose a lower class of that first lower class limit. Now, you got two options. One is, and the easiest one is, just pick the smallest data point. Just let it start there. You also can go slightly lower. And by that, I mean, if my lowest value was the number 2, but my class width was going to be 5, it's really easy for me to go 0, 5, 10, 15, 20 as those starters instead of trying to do 2, 7, 12, 17. I'm kind of on some off values, not the traditional multiples of 5 that we usually see. So you can go with the lowest data point or something a little under. That's fine. Then you're going to find all of your lower class limits and then try and find, and then get your upper class limits. Once you've created all your classes, then we're going to go through and construct our frequency distribution, okay? So we're going to take a look at number 1 for this data set. Okay. And so they tell us that they've got a particulate emissions for 65 vehicles in particles per gallon of fuel. They want us to construct a frequency distribution using a class width of 0.50 and 0 as the first lower limit. Okay. So the way that we do this is we're going to 0.00 and then we're going to add that 0.50. So that's going to go here as the next one. And then I'm going to add 0.50. So it's going to be 1.00. And then 1.50, 2.0, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. And I'm looking at my data sets need to go. I see a 6.5, so I'm going to have to go this a little ways. 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Okay. Now, to figure out where I need to run this to, if this group is going to start at 0.50, and we're looking at using 2 decimal places, then this is going to be 0.049. If this one's going to start at 1.0, this one's going to end at 0.99. Now, once I've established this, I can now add 0.50 to each one, or I just kind of keep my pattern going. 399. 649 699. So now once we've created that whole lovely list, okay, now we're just going to go through and we're going to count the number that are in each category. Okay, so I've got 2, 7, 19, 7, 7, 4, 9, 4, 2, 1, 0, 1, 0, and 2. So notice here that I do have a couple of categories that don't have anything in them, but I still have to have them listed when we're doing the big grouping. Okay. So now then, okay. Now then, usually, and I will say that this is actually a pretty lengthy data set for this one. We have lots of classes. Personally, I probably would have done 0. I would have done a class with a 1, so this whole thing would have been cut about in half as that is processing through for that. Okay. Now, the other thing that can go along with this, okay, in the same thing. So this was our frequency. Is we can also still have a relative frequency as this is processed. Okay. So they told us in the start of this that there was 65 vehicles. So finding the relative frequency for each one of these. It's 0.11, 2, 0.11, 0.06, 0.14, 0.06, 0.03, 0.02, 0, 0.02, 0, and 0.03. Okay. So you can also do relative frequencies on this same setup and do it the same way that we did it in the relative or in the regular frequency charts that we did.